Mr. Hawkins, you are not her father. Mr. Abbott, you are not her father.
It's over.
Question: should DNA testing be required at birth to confirm paternity? This is your sleuthing soul checking in for another video. Be sure to give this one a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap the notification bell for all updates. Growing up, I remember the talk show circuit where mama's baby, daddy's maybe became a common theme. Whether it was Maury telling men whether they were the father of the cute kid on the screen to the side of the stage, to more contemporary programs like Paternity Court with Lauren Lake, or Karamo that would sometimes feature adults who sought a sense of security and wanted to know without a shadow of a doubt who their true father was. The family court system adds an additional layer that can potentially leave men on the hook for supporting a child financially that turns out not to be his. But what happens when a man who is proven by way of a DNA test not to be the father, and the court still orders him to pay tens of thousands of dollars in back child support?
Gabriel Cornejo came to Harris County Family Court hoping he wouldn't have to leave common sense at the door.
I've never thought that in my life I would have to defend myself for something that I'm innocent of.
Cornejo is a father. He's raising his 3 kids and 2 of his brother's children. But last year tells us a deputy showed up at his door with court papers claiming the state of Texas thinks he has another child.
She turned out to be 15, 16 years old at the time, I think.
Cornejo claims he never knew and pretty much immediately set out to meet his then 16-year-old daughter for what he says was the first time.
She's a wonderful girl. Very smart. Just a lot going on for herself.
He, his wife, and the ex-girlfriend he broke up with 16 years ago all agreed he should get a DNA test, and he did.
Well, the results came in and I'm not the father.
But that's not the end of the case, not even close. Cornejo's ex still wants the money, and so does the state of Texas. In 2003, Cornejo's ex-girlfriend went to court and said Cornejo was the only possible father. The state of Texas got what's called a default judgment and started assessing child support payments, which continue to add up, now totaling nearly $65,000. Cornejo says he was never told. Court records suggest, but don't prove, he got a subpoena way back when, and he denies it. Lawyers for the mother of the child suggest support was taken from Cornejo's paycheck long ago and Cornejo never fought it. That can be enough to establish a Loctite claim that Cornejo should have dealt with this long ago.
Don't stick your head in the sand because it's not going to go away, and there can be consequences even if you don't do anything.
Unfortunately, this young child is the one who suffers.
Unless he and his lawyer can convince a judge to take a second look, there's nothing that can change the old court order, and Cornejo will still owe all that money.
They say he should have fought it back then. He failed to do so. He didn't do so within 4 years. But how can you fight something you don't know anything about?
The case will be back in court later this summer. In the meantime, Cornejo is pushing for a change in state law that could prevent situations like the one he's in.
Talk show TV makes millions off the catchphrase, "You are not the father." But the reality in Memphis is just because you're not the daddy doesn't mean Shelby County Juvenile Court won't make you pay.
I was down there in handcuffs and chains.
Over the years, Edward Bowdery had his driver's license stripped and once even found himself in handcuffs over child support payments for a child that's not his.
I would hate to see somebody else go through the same thing. I've been going through this. Headaches.
This mound of paperwork shows a juvenile court judge ordered him to pay child support even before the birth.
I didn't do a voluntary acknowledgement. I didn't sign the birth certificate. All I knew is we legitimated the child in your name.
Bowdery asked several judges during several hearings for a DNA test, but no judge ordered one.
I said, how did I even get put on child support? And I never said this was my child. And they said, again, this is not what we're here for.
In 2009, he took the child himself to get a DNA test and found the son he'd supported for years was not biologically his. He took the documentation to court. The judge wouldn't accept it, but ordered a new DNA test done that showed the same results. Probability of paternity, 0%.
They never did do what they were originally supposed to do, which was give me the opportunity to take a DNA test. I was just a voice not being heard, so I guess I needed a choir.
Juvenile Court Magistrate Nancy Kessler agreed in October to allow Bowdery to disestablish paternity, but only after, he says, she admonished him for taking it this far.
The judge stated that, well, I find it very distasteful that you're bastardizing a child.
The judge stopped the child support going forward, but Maury still has to pay $460 a month to the mother in back pay. He doesn't believe he should have to pay anything. In fact, he believes someone owes him money, the $30,000 he's already paid. Administrators at juvenile court denied our request for an interview on this case, saying it's not appropriate to comment about rulings. What are the chances of him getting his money back?
It is very unusual and very infrequent.
Family lawyer Miles Mason says in a similar case, the Tennessee Supreme Court ruled a man in Middle Tennessee could sue his ex-wife for fraud. He got a $100,000 judgment.
There was a very large judgment awarded against the mother, but I doubt it would be likely that they would be able to collect in most cases.
This bill is simple, that a person who is proven not to be the biological father.
State Representative G.A. Hardaway says he's heard from a number of fathers in his district who were like Maury. He introduced a bill letting them file civil lawsuits against the biological fathers, but it never made it out of committee.
To a degree, justice needs to be served. I think it needs to be a totally different, a new law or something.
The question many people might ask, why is Maury still paying back pay to the child's mother? Well, we're told by law, the new judge he's dealing with can't undo another judge's ruling.
So again, the question stands. Should DNA testing be required at birth to confirm paternity? Some United States representatives are taking on the mantle of effecting some change, like Michigan State Representative Jim Runstead, who introduced a paternity fraud bill several years back. In Tennessee, House Bill 2698, brought forth by Representative Antonio Parkinson, sought to address paternity fraud as well. And recently, in Ohio, there's been a similar proposal to amend state law with House Bill 435.
There is a new bill introduced in the Ohio House called the Right to Know Act, and it's being sponsored by Representative Josh Williams. The act is all about hospitals offering genetic testing at birth, and this is for parents to have the opportunity to test paternity as well as maternity. Now, the testing is optional as it does require the consent of both parents, who they can decline. However, they would have to acknowledge the fact that they were informed. And while the act is partly targeted at reducing any issues in hospitals, such as identification issues or baby swaps, at the same time, it is mainly targeted at unmarried couples in the state of Ohio. And the reason for this is because they're trying to reduce the number of court cases related to paternity, not only due to cost, but also due to the fact that they believe that they have the right to know the biological parents at the time of birth.
In the genealogy space, there's an abbreviation, NPE, which stands for non-paternity event, or the less common meaning, not the parent expected, that may apply but is not limited to when the biological father is not the man who has long been presumed to be the father. I've come across this a lot when I help relatives and clients locate their biological families. Their DNA matches sometimes have barely built a family tree, or the trees are missing the paternal side, or it pales in comparison to the amount of information on the maternal side of the family tree. Unfortunately, some NPE instances may still occur due to extramarital affairs.
Me and my ex-wife, we got into an argument over the phone. The mother of my two daughters. And she let something slip that made me question, is the first kid I had with her my actual daughter? So when I go and get my kids, all of them together, all three, I took them to Charlotte and we got the DNA test. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, come back, find out the first kid I had with her while I was in high school was never mine to begin with. And I just had my other kid with her, right? The one that really is mine. That was a rough time. What's the worst thing a woman could do? To me, that's the worst thing you could do. And she did it because she knew I was going in the military. I made the decision I was going. Now that I know the truth that this kid isn't mine, I almost had a little bit of relief that I can probably let this part of my life go. And also child support. The sadness that hit me was the fact that she's not mine now. When I get my daughter, watching her watch me take her sister now, and not her. The first few years, I still took her, but I knew at some point I'm gonna have to not. Her dad's gonna want time and all this stuff. But the first time I got her, after the fact, I asked her, did your mom tell you something about what's going on with us? And she said, Mom said that you don't want to be my dad anymore. And I was like, here we go. So I got to battle this. And then trouble started happening between me and her that I just had to let it go. We still talk today, but it's just sad what I had to deal with.
Some things to consider. Is it government overreach, or does it come down to personal responsibility? If left up to individuals, how would you suggest DNA testing to confirm paternity play out? Will people's feelings outweigh the facts that the rightful father should know? And most importantly, move in a way that keeps the baby's best interests in mind in the long term? Let's take a listen to people sound off.
Mandatory DNA tests for every child at birth is a great idea. Hear me out. If every child was DNA tested, you would automatically know if the father was the father or not. You would no longer have men raising children that aren't theirs, unless they willingly agreed to do that. It's about so much more than just making sure the woman didn't cheat. This could expedite the process for so many things, all the legal stuff and child support. You would automatically know, for sure, if the child was the father's or not. I don't know if you saw that story circulating on Facebook not too long ago about the nurse who was still deliberately switching babies, but even accidentally, this still happens. Mandatory DNA tests would not only protect fathers, but it would protect entire families. You would know and be able to locate a child if it was switched. The peace of mind alone that this would give mothers and families, I think, far outweighs any discomfort that this could do. And it's not just about the parents. It makes sure that the child goes to the family that he or she belongs to. And girl, if you cheated, that's on you. That man should not be responsible for something that ain't his fault.
I personally pay taxes, and I care about where my money goes. I'm not here to pay for so-and-so because there's a confusion about who's the father. That's not my business. Handle your personal. And for me, I want to fund schools. I want to fund the MTA because the trains are never on time. We got bigger problems. We have bigger problems. I'm sorry. I'm not paying for no mandatory test.
Let us understand why it's so selfish of you women who debate and argue against these mandatory paternity tests. Because we hear these stories time and time again. We see numerous clips of men presenting the DNA papers to their woman and say, hey, look, it's proof that I am not the father.
You are not. I don't think there's any issue with a man taking care of another man's child. Women do it all the time, whether you know or not. He might bring another child and say, oh, I had this out of our wedlock, what are we gonna do? Or he's taking your money and paying child support to another family. You had no idea. So when we're just jumping oh, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna do that, hold on, it's already being done.
You could have been doing so many other things with your life. You could have been figuring your life out, I don't know, feeding pigeons, I don't know, doing anything. But you raising a kid that is not yours. I mean, if you had the option to know that was your kid and you wanted to raise that kid, that's perfectly fine. A lot of people do that. But when you don't know, you're doing it out of the obligation or the mindset that this is my child, I'm gonna raise him or her, I'm gonna raise them up, I love them, this is my DNA, this is my blood. And then come to find out that's not your kid.
I mean, in all honesty, I think, with government, potentially passing a law to make DNA a must, I think it works out for the best for everyone, in all honesty, because for a kid, I think the kid deserves to know who's their real mother and father. And if it's something that we start now, it's something that makes it an easier conversation down the road where it's not necessarily about trust, but it's just something that comes as a part of having a kid. I mean, you've already tested the baby to make sure that it's healthy. Why not test to make sure you understand who the parents are?
I've said before that a law making mandatory DNA testing at birth is a terrible idea, but men decided they wanted to argue with me, so I'm going to readdress the issue. Mandatory paternity testing at birth is a terrible idea. If you choose to get a paternity test at birth, that's on you. I truly do not care. Mandatory is the key word here. Mandatory DNA testing would mean that every child born into the United States, plus both of their parents, would need to be tested at birth. We not seeing why that's a bad idea? One, that's going to lead to the government storing our genetic data. They're not going to take every single American's genetic info and just throw it away. Two, imagine a man cheats on his wife, God forbid with a teenager. What do you think he's going to do to her when he realizes she's pregnant and he has to do a DNA test? But we don't care about endangering women or children's lives, right? I know. And three, who's going to pay for it? Because the government sure isn't, and I'm not paying to get a DNA test because you too scared to ask your baby mama for a paternity test. The real solution here that a lot of people don't want to hear is to stop having sex with people you don't want to create a family with.
It should be mandatory that every child born should actually do a DNA test and to know who the father is solely even for medical grounds. Because we need to know, because this child, is it Simon's or is it Stephen's? Stephen has a different medical history, Simon has a different medical history. Second thing is this, when it comes to even tracking the biologically even what What medical history do they have? What medical history does Stephen have? It's easy to define it and to know definitively, even when it comes to even court cases, or even when it comes to other issues, we know definitively this child is Simon's or this child is Stephen's. It needs to be 100% and to level out the playing field to know that indeed every man also knows this is my child as much as every woman knows that this is their child.
Why are there so many women against doing paternity tests when the baby is born? I just made a video about the Laura Owen situation, a woman who accused the bachelor Clayton Eckert of being the father of her child, being indicted for paternity fraud because essentially she said that she was pregnant by him. She wasn't actually pregnant at all. So the judge actually decided to report her, and now there is a criminal case open against her for the paternity fraud. In my comment section, there are women talking about how women are entitled to bodily autonomy and that they also have to look out for the bodily autonomy of the child. To do a DNA test, you don't actually need the DNA of the mother. Does it help the test go smoother? Yes, but having the mother's DNA is definitely not required. I get that it might be embarrassing or kind of rude, but shouldn't the father be able to know that the child is his just like the mother knows that the child is hers because it came out of her? It seems like we should know who the father of our children are, and it shouldn't be offensive for someone to ask for a DNA test.
Grown women want you to have the DNA test at birth, whether you're in a relationship or not. Let me cook for a second. Grown women, they want you to get that DNA test at birth. They don't even care if they've been married to you. The reason why they want you to have that DNA test, the reason why it's mandatory for them to give you that DNA test, because they don't ever want you to play about their baby. They don't ever want you to think for a second that this baby is not yours, that this baby is not your responsibility. She's not even going to give you room to second guess it. Married and all, she gonna say, let's go ahead and get that right. Let's go, because you need to know this is yours, this is your bloodline, so you have no excuse on how you're supposed to move. And there are going to be a lot of whorish, nasty, childish women. Well, if I'm in a relationship, then why would I need it? That's disrespectful. No, it ain't, because proper conduct does not fear exposure. When you get pulled over, guess what you do? You gladly hand your license over because you didn't do anything wrong. Let's start making DNA tests mandatory as soon as that baby drop, relationship, marriage, or no.
I gave birth in Georgia, and when I gave birth, I asked them to do a DNA test. Not that I didn't know who the father was. No, I just wanted that paperwork, give Justin peace of mind. Just, like, I wouldn't be upset if someone if Justin asked me for, a paternity test. Because I know, right? I know. I ain't been with nobody. I've been with you. So I know. And I don't have an issue giving you that documentation. I don't see that as a problem. It should be mandatory to begin with. I tried to get a DNA test at the hospital. Apparently, they don't do those. I don't know how it is in other states, but in Georgia, if you go and you give birth to a baby in the hospital, their policy is not to do, maybe at the hospital I was at, maybe that's not across the board, I don't know. But they don't do the paternity test for you. And that's weird. It should be mandatory. In order for him to sign the birth certificate, he should have to see a verified paternity test through the hospital or through the court, letting him know his status with that child. I'm sick and tired of these kids growing up thinking that their father is one person, only to find out that it's somebody else. That's sick. It's sick for the child. It's sick for the man, because you knew you slept with other men. What's wrong with you? You knew you slept with other people around that same time, dirty broad. Can you imagine? You've spent X amount of time loving this child, thinking that they're your baby, thinking that they're your offspring. You're pouring into them. You've developed a relationship with this child because you think that they're your child, only to find out X amount of years later, no, that's not your child, that's somebody else's. What?
I'd like to know your thoughts. Leave a comment below and tell me, should DNA testing be mandatory at birth? This conversation will continue, whether or not laws on the books require it. But no matter what, DNA tells the story that people don't or won't. This is your sleuthing soul, signing off until the next one.